Morning, good morning. Is my mic on? Looks like we're good. Good morning, everybody. Got 5 minutes until we truly get started, but welcome to the pre-lesson show chat noodle around session. Still got time to tell your friends who might want to learn to play or improve their skills. Send them a text, share it on Facebook. You know the drill. I talked today about how to hear chord changes and how to get used to listening to different parts of the song and identifying where you're at, kind of inside the chord structure, and get yourself used to just following your ears and being able to cope with a song or a situation just by using your ears and not needing to rely on the paper. I'm big on that. Hello, Sharon. Good morning. I do miss going to Seattle. And Darlene's back. Aloha. Good morning, Virginia. Friend from right down the road. And Alistair, are you in the UK? I hope I'm saying your name right. That's not a common one for us on this side of the pond. Yay, I did it. One of these days I want to try and make it out there. I've been to Europe, I've been to Germany and Italy, but never to the UK. I would love to meet all the ukulele heads over there who are, I hear, are so enthusiastic about the instrument. Even James Hill was like, oh man, those UK guys, they wear me out. One of these days. Good morning, Keith. Those country double bends are pretty tough to do. One more minute, we'll get started. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Whew, it is cold in Hawaii. I know you guys are all gonna laugh at that, but boy, I had 3 layers up top and 3 layers down below this morning. Time to put some more blankets on the bed. Okay, so 10 a.m. in the islands. So what I want to talk about today is using your ears to navigate chord changes. We'll see what I can come up with to share with you folks, and hopefully help illustrate this and get you going. But I find that so often the people that I teach get stuck looking at the paper. That's like their main mode of focus is looking at the paper. And I like to remind people that when you look at the paper, you're actually adding a step of translation to the music that you're playing. You're looking at the paper, you're using your skills at reading and visual learning to bring it into your brain, and then your brain is interpreting it, and then your brain is turning it into a physical motion that you're trying to put onto the instrument, and then it becomes music. Whereas if you just listen to something and respond, you kind of go straight to the brain part of things, and you're instantly into the translation stage instead of having to look first then translate. Just you hear it, you translate. And that's going to be a lot slower for people who are just getting started with this, which is why it can be frustrating or discouraging. But I think it's super important to try and eliminate that step on the way, if possible, because then you're that much further ahead, and you can maneuver music that much faster. And it takes a lot of work. I'm not going to, blow smoke or anything and try and convince you otherwise. It's hard work, but I think it's super worth it. And what I've noticed is that in a class, say if I'm, I don't know, teaching how to play a vamp or teaching how to play a song, and we're going to learn the melody to a song or something. If I teach my students how to play the thing before I ever give them a handout, and I say, yeah, you'll get a handout at the end, and I teach them to play it, and I force them to use their ears and to interact with the music kind of organically, that they may not remember it all, but what they do play, and when they do get it out and they play it, they're not having to work on timing as much. They are much more in the feel of the music when they are just intuitively playing along. And then I feel like, oh, they've got it. That's cool. Maybe if we're going to talk about another subject, they're going to need the handout to remind them. So I pass the handout out, and it all goes in the tank. It's just a total nightmare. And it's because I think they're adding that layer of, I'm trying to understand it as it's written now, instead of just like, oh, I was playing music, it was sounding nice, and I was fitting in, as opposed to trying to digest it. So that's my why perhaps you want to pursue this. And hopefully I can show you some things today that will help you on your way, at least encourage you to try this out. So the first thing I want to talk about is how chord changes happen and what they do. A lot of people don't even think about this. If you're playing a C chord and then you go to a G7, you're playing 2 different chords, right? I should probably make sure everybody is on the same page. That would be the professional thing. But you change chords, and you end up with 2 different units, 2 different note units. The notes together create a harmony sound. But really what's happening is you're changing what notes are happening on which string, right? This is a good exercise to help visualize it, is you can go string by string. You start on the bottom closest to the floor, and just pick the one string just repeatedly, and then make the chord change. So you can hear the individual notes moving inside the chord change. So on the bottom string, this note is in C, and then that note is happening in the G7. If you go to the next string up, and then G7, you start to hear more of what's going on inside there. On the C string, and then on the G string, nothing's going to happen because that's open. It's staying the same between the chords. But otherwise, it's moving. And by visualizing it separately, you can kind of think of your strings as like a string quartet, because each violin or viola or cello player, they're playing individual notes at a time. You have to kind of work some magic to get multiple notes or chords out of those old school instruments. And because they're playing one note at a time, they work together to play these chords, but each individual instrument is playing either up or down to reach the next note in the chord from where they're at currently and where they're going. So because we strum all the strings at once and we think, okay, I put my fingers here to play C, that's a C, we tend to get lost in the cohesiveness and the chordal unit itself. And so it can be nice to break it down and try to identify where the notes on each string are moving to when you change chords. Let's try C to F. So you start on the bottom string. And then on the E string, C. It's not going to change. There's no fingers moving on that string. And then on the top string. And so by having these individual harmony lines kind of in your mind, I feel that it helps you musically because you begin to understand and hear the internal melodies, but also it helps you kind of subconsciously as you go to identify the chord changes that are going to be happening, right? So you're playing in a song. The very first thing you need to know is when a chord change happens. It doesn't matter what chord you're playing if you're not playing it in the right time. So that is fine. But if I was to play something where you couldn't see it, this is a very cool use of the webcam. If I play something like this where I'm playing chords that to your ear aren't familiar and you can't visually see, try and figure out where the chord changes are happening. If you can't do this, you can't decide which chord I might be changing to, right? So if I was playing this, that was a little cheating. You can see my arm move. You want to get really comfortable being able to hear when the changes happen. A lot of times I see people get confused by thinking there are more changes than there actually are. And by doing this, you're searching for another chord that doesn't exist. And so if you call a chord change when there's not actually a chord change, say you're playing in the key of F and you're on an F chord, it's like, oh, I think there's a chord change. You're going to be looking for like a B flat or a C7 when actually you're still on F. So you're not even going to find what you're looking for. And that really confuses everything. So what I recommend doing is take a simple song. If you go, you can go to the easy songs page on liveukulele.com. And if you're on the website now watching the stream, hopefully I put a link in the description so you could go to the site. But if you're watching it, you just type in easy songs for beginners or something along those lines. It should come up. Any of those songs on there are fairly straightforward. I've tried to limit it to 3 or 4 chord songs. And just by nature, they're going to be straightforward. But if you take those songs and you look up the lyrics to that song, without the chords. Don't click on my links in the post. If you look up just the lyrics and you bring the lyrics up on a screen or put them in a Word document or something, and you sit and you listen to the song and try and figure out where the chord changes are happening and just make a mark. If you print out the lyrics, you could double space it and make a mark where you think the chord changes are going to be happening. Then you can go back and check, and you could then you click on the link in the post and see in the chords that I linked where the changes are happening. And it doesn't matter what the chords are at this point. You just want to know that you're hearing the chord changes at the right time. And by listening for this and practicing this, it's going to be good practice. You're going to get it figured out slowly and surely. Listening to just an ukulele player play the chord changes, like when I was just doing this action, that's pretty straightforward. The trick is when you get the whole band involved and your ears are distracted by a million different things, and you're listening to the singer and you're listening to the drummer and the bass player and whatever the guitar is playing, or whatever style song you choose to listen to. Hearing the changes can be challenging because there's a lot going on. So what you need to listen for is the overall picture. You should really probably feel the change more than you actually listen for it. It's like when you're looking at a star. If you look directly at it, it kind of gets more dim, but then you look off to the side and it comes back up. Same sort of thing is if you listen for the bigger picture and you just kind of feel it and go for an intuitive approach to figuring out where the chord changes are, a lot of times you're going to do better. But that said, you can follow the bass usually, especially in a simple song. The bass player is playing more simple things where it might just be the root and the five. If there's any bass players out there, they know what I'm talking about. But the bass player's job is to lean on the root note of whatever chord is being played. So if you listen to the bass is going to stick on those notes. So if they change more heavily to another note, then the odds are that there's been a chord change. But also you feel that more than the other instruments. If you're listening for the ukulele or the guitar, whatever, it's higher. Your ears are hearing that, but when the bass plays, your body feels it. And so if the bass changes its tonality, changes the note it's leaning on, where it's at, then your body's like, we got a chord change there because something moved and the center of the music has shifted. And I feel that because the bass has shifted to that new area. And I really wish I had like a full band with me that I could demonstrate these things, and I could demonstrate them for you, but I don't. That is a problem. But let's work through just a couple chord changes. I can hide my hand off camera, and we can walk through it step by step, and you can call out yourself where you think the changes are, and then we can confirm as we go through. Let's see if I can figure out a good progression for this. Okay, so let's try it. Okay, so if I'm playing, if I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, a lot of times on that 1 is where you hear the ghost chord change, where there's not actually a change happening, but you think there is. So, for instance, if I'm playing this, I shifted my fingerings. I went from an F here to an F here, but the chord didn't change. So if you were to hear that and think, oh, there's a chord change there, you're going to get in trouble because I'm still on F, even though I changed the fingerings. And this is where, if you're listening to the whole picture and the whole band or the bass player, then you're not going to get as distracted by what the guitarist or the ukulele player is playing, because they might be playing chords that highlight notes that they want to stick out more, and those more decorative chords might actually not be chord changes. It might just be the same chord in a different place, right? Because you can play different inversions. You can play F here, you can play F here, F here. That's where our cutaway is helpful. You can play in all those different places, and get the same chord, but it's not going to be a change. Okay, so with that in mind, that by itself actually also makes listening to just like a solo ukulele player, it can make it a little more um, confusing, because they might be playing, if I'm playing a melody and I want to change my melody note but harmonize it similarly with a chord around it, then I'm gonna change the fingering even if the harmony doesn't actually change. I hope that's not too confusing. But let's try some chord changes. Okay, so there's our one chord. We're gonna start on that one. What I want you to do is think or say out loud when you hear a chord change, and then we'll go through and I'll try and explain what has been a chord change or what hasn't. Okay, so here we go. Okay, that one was really simple, trying to take it easy on you at first. So all we were doing was changing chords every 2 bars, so every 8 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it doesn't really matter what the chords are. I'm going to change it a little bit. Let's try it again if I can remember how it goes. That one was a little bit more complex. Started on the F just like before for 8 counts, 2 bars. And then went to a D minor for 1 bar. And then another D minor for another bar. So this is one of those situations where I'm actually staying on D minor for both bars. And if you think that this is a chord change, then you're going to be looking for something that isn't actually there. And then the B flat was 2 bars as well. And then I went F and C. And back to the beginning. So we could sit and do that all day long. And if you have a partner or somebody around that you could practice this with, it would be great practice to like play some random chords, and I'll yell out when there's a chord change and they can correct you as you go. That would be awesome practice. If not, you could just watch ukulele players play songs online, or look them up on YouTube. Look up like Cynthia Lynn or whoever your favorite ukulele singer strummer person is, and just don't look at the video, don't watch what their fingers are doing, and listen for the chord changes. And then when you think you've got a pretty good idea how the chord changes happen, then go back and look at the video and confirm whether you've got it right. Watch when the fingers change and watch for, the different chord shapes that are happening. So that'd be one thing to do. And then the more advanced version would be to pull up the full band tracks, listen to the Beatles or whoever, Pink Floyd, maybe not Pink Floyd, but some sort of band with straight ahead songs where it's like, kind of, I guess, obvious music. I want to say, like, I don't know, Jim Croce or the Eagles, or like straightforward music that you can really get into and feel where the chord changes are. And then again, close your eyes, listen, try and feel for when the changes are, and then confirm that by looking at a chord G. Okay, so again, that easy songs for beginners page on Live Ukulele is a good resource for songs that fit that straight ahead vein. That's the reason they're on that page, is that I felt that they were straightforward enough to be played by a beginner, but also to be listened to by a listening beginner, even if your playing skills are maybe above that song. Okay, so that's a lot of rambling about hearing chord changes, but how do you know where you need to go when you hear that there is a change? Okay, this is why you start with 3 chord songs or 2 chord songs. Let's start with a 2 chord song. I actually, if you haven't heard it yet, I put up a podcast with Bob Stouffer, one of my first mentors in music, and we talk about how he helps get people started playing. And he just plays a 2 chord jam for like 20 minutes where the repetition helps the student get super comfortable in what they're doing, and they start to become more intuitive with the music because they can relax into feeling comfortable with what they have. So that's a good place to start, is if you can find a 2 chord song like Jambalaya. That was one of his examples. Is it's just everybody knows it, it's so straightforward, and it's only 2 chords. And so if you can play that song by ear, you're in really good shape. And then you can find whatever other 2 chord songs there are out there. There are actually some that I put up recently on another page on the website. If you search for novice ukulele, I put up a novice lesson, but there also should be a link in there to a number of songs that just use like F and C7, and you could work on those and find interpretations of those that you could listen to, because those songs only have 2 songs. About a Girl, Nirvana. There you go. That's a real hot tip. Start with Nirvana for your ear training. Okay. So basically a 2 chord song is only going to step up the difficulty level just a wee bit. That's the very next step from knowing where the chord changes happen. Because if you get to the point where you know where the chord changes happen reliably and you're accurate, then you just bounce back and forth between the chords. There's no actually figuring out what the chord is, because you know it's just going to be the opposite of what you're currently playing. So like Jambalaya, da 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 da. That's the next chord change. So I know it's going to be C7 because it's an F and C7 song, or a 1 and 5 song. So da 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 da. Then we go back to F because that's the one option. If you want to turn it around, you can. But in that situation, you have to go to the other chord. As long as you are changing in the right place, you have to go back and forth to the correct chord. It gets a little bit more complicated when you go to 3 chord songs, which is the next obvious step. And I recommend going to 3 chord songs instead of just like, oh, well, I can play by ear now. I'm going to go listen to, Yesterday or something that's chordally complex, right? If you go and try and learn Bohemian Rhapsody by ear, or Killer Queen, or some crazy composition along those lines, you're going to be frustrated because there's just so many chords that even if you know where the chord changes are, you won't know what the chords are. Killer Queen is still a song that I would like to learn someday, but it is just really complicated. Okay. So a 3 chord song. Each chord has a personality. We have the very obvious personalities like major or minor. If I play a major chord, it's got an uplifting sort of sound, but if I play minor, it's a lot more sad and menacing, kind of. Those should be pretty straightforward for anybody who is watching this. I assume that most people who have played even to a relatively low level beginner, that's going to be pretty obvious. Right? And if you're not comfortable with those, play some major and minor chords back to back to get the sound in your head, because that's a real important one. But aside from that, say we're playing all major chords. Within the key, how they're related to each other, they're going to have different personalities and different lifts. Okay? So if I'm playing in the key of F, they're all going to have different personalities. The F is going to be the most resolved and the most like, oh, we could stop the song here. Ta-da. That's the end of the song. Right? Anything besides F is going to feel a little bit like you don't want to end the song there. you're still waiting, right? You're kind of it suspends that expectation that you're going to go back to F. And so if you're on a chord or you're listening for a chord and you're hearing a chord that doesn't feel like it's settled down all the way, that you wouldn't really want to end the song there, you're probably not on the one, right? We call the root or the name of the key that first chord. If we're in the key of F, it's F. It's the one chord, the root of the key. If you're not on that chord, it's going to feel a little bit more like there's anticipation, like, oh, something needs to happen next, or you expect it to happen next. It's like playing this, right? You're waiting for that last note to finish it off. Same with the chords. If you don't go back to the F, you're probably, and you want to go back, your body wants you to go back to the F, then you're probably not on an F chord, not on the one chord. Aside from that, you have the four chord. The four chord is, actually, let's skip the four chord for a sec. Let's go to the five chord. These are the three, the 1, 4, 5 are the three most common chords in a key in Western music, in simple music. And so they're the obvious ones you want to start understanding how to recognize. The five chord is like the opposite side of the coin from the one chord. The one chord is very resolved. You could stop the song there. But the five chord raises the tension. And a lot of times the five chord is played as a seventh chord. So instead of playing C, you would play C7. And this heightens the anticipation even more. If I'm in context, that still sounds like it needs to go somewhere. So if you think of each chord change as being, see if I've got any illustration tools here. Here, this will work. It's not exactly what I was looking for, but it's nice and green so you can see it. Okay, so if you're playing, it's a rubber band. It's actually a hair tie, but it's kind of like a rubber band. So if you're playing the one chord, that's the most consonant and it's relaxed. If you play the five chord, you're at like the tightest tension you can bring the music to, because it's very, very dissonant to the rest of the song, and it always wants to resolve back to the one, right? One, no tension, five, high tension. 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5. That's what your ear is doing and your body is doing when you're listening to music and you're going between those two chords. 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5. And so if you listen to it and you pay attention, you can kind of relate that visual example to hearing it. So that 7 or the 5 or the 5/7 is that highest point of tension. I wish I had an assistant who could like hold the rubber band while I was playing and represent my chord changes on the rubber band. That'd be great. Okay, so 1, low tension. The 5/7, high tension. So in between that, again, if we had a 1-2 chord song, a lot of 2 chord songs are the 1 and the 5 because it's the most interest, kind of most bang for your buck as far as a 2 chord song could be. You know, lots of movement from point A to point B. Right? But when you add the 4 is kind of the lone child that messes up the whole program, because when you add the 4 chord in there, in the case of F, it would be B flat. When you add the 4 chord, it's somewhere between. So you have 1, 5, and then the 4 is kind of like a halfway point, and you have to learn to feel this, because pretty much any of the other chords you might run across in a song are also at the middle point. They're not super tight, but it's not the 1. 1, 4, 5, right? Okay. So that's 1, 4, 5, or 1, 5, 1, 1, 5, 1. Listen to it. Don't look at it. If I change to a different key, just getting the sound in your ear. Okay, that's our 1. If we go 1 5 1, listen to the rubber band. Feel the rubber band in your body if you can. Okay, so now test time. I want you to think about whether I'm changing from the 1 to another 1 or if I'm changing from the 1 to the 5. Okay? Use your ear balls. Here we go. Hopefully you said 1 to 5. Okay? Here's another one. That one is 1 to 1. How about this? 1 to 5. Okay, let's try another few. 1 to 1. That was 1 to 5. Now, there is, let me see if I can find it. I'm going to take a quick Google it break, or actually find it on my website. Break. Learning by ear. Where's the learning by ear page? Because there is a great tool that can help you get comfortable with hearing chord changes, and it's just like a computer piano that plays changes, and then it's a test, and you pick what note you think it is. Ear training app? No. Shucks. Where was it? Well, if you're a diehard follower of my lessons, I will try and post a link. I'll find that and post a link to it in the on the page on the Ukulele where I'm keeping all the live streams and some of the resources. Okay, but there is a really great app where it'll play you a chord change, and then you say what the chord change is or what chords are happening when, and it'll test you basically like 1 to 1 or 1 to 5. And you can hear that and practice that just in an isolated situation where it's just a simple piano sound. Okay, so that's good practice, going from one chord to the next and identifying whether it's chord change or not. That was like kind of a back step to fill in some gaps. But now we're talking about the 4 chord, right? The 4 chord is that middle chord. It's the B flat. And this is the one that confuses you. Usually you get confused thinking that the 4 is the 5, or vice versa when both are present. If it's just the 5, it's easy. If it's just the 4, it's again pretty easy. But if it's 4 and 5 and you have to decide which is which, then it becomes a challenge. Okay, so the 4 is a little bit of a lift. It's not as much tension as the 5, but it's just kind of like a picking you up. I always liked the sound of the 4. I think the 4. Where'd my illustration go? The 4 was always kind of my favorite change, just because of it wasn't really a hard change. It wasn't very dissonant, but it was like it was like the angels singing kind of a change. Okay, so here is 1. Remember 1, 4, 5, 1, 5, 4, 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 1, 4. Right? This is stupid, but I think it kind of shows you what your ear is doing when you hear these things, or what your ear should be responding to, and how you can expect the different tensions of the chords in the music to play out in your mind and in your ear. Okay, So. Let's play some changes, and I'll try and get you hearing. Let's try the same thing that I just did, where I went um, C to C or C to G. Let's do the same thing, but with the 4, right? And now I'm gonna play in F because I can. Okay. So just to get you established, here is 1, 4, 1. And then if I was to stay, 1, 1, 1. Let's try some off camera. Ready? Use your ears. That's 1, 4, 1. Here's another one. Just because something's going higher or lower doesn't mean it's a chord change. Doesn't mean it's the harmony's changing. It's just that the notes are moving up. But really what you're looking for is how the notes are related to each other and whether they pull on the rubber band or not. Okay, that one again. That was 1 to 1. Here's another one. 1, 4, 1. What about this? 1, 4, 1. On sort of a trick question. 1, 1, 1. Right? So, all this to say, you can learn these things individually, and if you can, practice them individually because it's a lot easier this way. As soon as you go to guessing which one you have to go to, is it the 5 or is it the 4? It gets confusing. So let's try that now. Kind of move our way along. Now we have 3 chords that could be the answer. Okay, so 1, 4, and 5. I'll play 5, 7 to make it a little more obvious. Okay, you can always identify the 7 chord because it has kind of that bluesy twang to it, which is independent of the tension that it has inside the song. Because, like, for instance, you could play a blues. That's just the 1 chord, but I'm adding a 7th to give it the bluesy twang, even though it's still the 1 chord. A 7th in the chord doesn't mean that it's the 5, 7 or that highest tension chord. Right? So let's try these. I'm gonna go either 1, 4, 5, 1, 4, 1 or 1, 5, 1. And you can see if you can practice hearing and double check. This is like the quiz hour lesson. Right? Here we go. That's 1. 1, 4, 5, 4, 1. That's like you're calibrating your ears with those chords. Here we go. Again. That's 1, 4, 1. Okay, try this one. That's 1, 5, 1. Here's another one. That was a little bit harder. That's 1, 5, 1. But what I'm doing, and what can be kind of another stumbling block for your ear, is that you have the 1, but if the melody, the highest note in the chord, which I think the highest note in the chord has the melody of the chord because it's the one your ear hears the best. That's the most obvious note in the chord. If that doesn't change between the chords, you can get a little confused because in the 5, 7 here, that's also the melody note. So the change isn't as obvious. You're listening for this. That's the movement. Whereas this stays the same. 1, 5, 1. Here's some more. 1-4-1. Here's what the 1-5-1 would sound like. Right? It's gonna be my new. Instead of conducting, I'm just gonna play the rubber band. Okay. Let's try some more. I'm gonna try stringing some chords together now to try and increase the difficulty a little bit. And if you're not getting this, that's totally fine. I recommend keep an eye out for that link. I'll drop it in there, and you can play with the app and take it as slow as you need to until you bring your success rate up as high as you can get it, because it'll show you like your percentage of correctness. Okay, so now we're going to do 4 chords in a row, 4 changes in a row, and it's going to be either 1-4-5 or 1-5-4. Let's try that to start. I'll give you a little bit of parameters. Okay, so 1-4-5-4-1 or 1-5-4-5. Okay, I'm confusing myself. Back in the depths of my brain, it's going, the chipmunks are talking back there. Okay, so that's what's going on. Let's try those. It'll be either one of those 2 progressions: 1-4-5-4 or 1-5-4-5. Here we go. That's 1-5-4-5. Try this one. That's 1-4-5-4-1. 1-4-1-4-5-4-1. I'm so confusing myself. It's too early for this. Here's another one. I messed it up. Again, 1-5-4-5. It starts with the higher tension and then kind of relaxes and then goes up again. So when we play that, I dropped it again. When we play that, we're playing 1-5-4-5-1. When we do the other one, it's 1-4-5-4-1. Okay, try and relate that in your ears and in your body as I play through these different things. I think it's super helpful to try and feel it as opposed to think it. If you think about it too much, you kind of, I don't know, dull your other senses. Whereas if you just kind of relax into letting everything happen at once, you're going to be more likely to pick up other musical clues, which might be like more feeling, or, you know, why am I so uptight? Why am I so antsy? But if you're thinking about it as like, oh, it's just a C7, it's a C7, it's a C7, that might not tell you everything you need to know. It might be like, oh, it's the 5 because it's making me antsy in this case. Go back to F, go back to F, go back to F. Right, and then it's all released and you can hear that and feel that at the same time. Here's a couple more changes. I'm not necessarily going to go in the same order we were doing before. I'm just going to grab some random chords, 1-4-5, and put them together, try and guess what's happening. One more time. That's kind of a hard one. That's 1-5-7-1-4. And the reason it's so tricky is because of this. Remember that melody note we were talking about? The melody note stays for that change. And so you're not getting the help of the moving melody to assist your ears in following along. Here's a different one. It's 1, 4, 5, 4, 1. Okay, so that's been a lot of quizzes and talking and explanations and rubber band visuals. Does anybody have any questions? I'm a feel like that. If all that was old news, then you probably old news, but you wanted to learn more. Then your best bet is probably to continue practicing what you know and just increase the difficulty level. And that would be, is it musictheory.net? I really want to find this. Ear training, chord progression. Tone Deer, that's the one. Tone Deer. Okay, so if you go to tonedeer.com, Tone Deer, as in Dear John, Dear, there are exercises in the menu, and you can go to chord progressions. Okay, and if you start with simple triads, it'll say 1, 4, 5. How many questions? Show advanced options. You can change different parameters. Like there's the length of the progression, which you could set as 4, which is kind of what we were doing. But if you start the quiz and you listen, you hear the first question. You're going to choose. I believe you choose the order of the chord progression, and you can practice your way through this. Tone Deer. I'm going to throw it up right now on the Live Ukulele live stream page so that you guys have got the link, because the link is pretty important. Right. Okay, so tonedeer.com. That's super powerful, um, super useful. And there's the other ear training exercises are great as well. Any of those on there are going to be super helpful. But for most ukulele players, the chord progressions one is probably going to be the most practical and useful. So check that out, and definitely bookmark that so you can come back to it and practice that. If you were to spend like 5 minutes a day just poking around on the Tone Deer quiz, I imagine you would be profoundly impressed by your improvement by the end of the month. Bordessa is Italian, Dan. It's northern Italy by Lake Como. But I am Portuguese as well, so I do have something in common with the ukulele. I'm 25% Portuguese, at least I think. I can't remember exactly what the numbers are from my 23andMe or whatever it was, but Bordessa is Italian. Okay. Can that possibly be the only question anybody had? Okay, so, and let's see. I address the folks that are like kind of, this is old news. Keep practicing, expand your parameters a little bit. If you want to bring up the challenge, I recommend going beyond the simple triads quiz and going to like the full key, where you end up with all the minor chords as well, because you can think of a key, for me at least, I think of keys as 3 major chords and 3 minor chords, and then there's one left over that's basically like the 5/7 again ish. But you have the 1, 4, 5, which is your 1, 4, 5, F, B flat, C if you were in the key of F, and then you have basically the relative minor 1, 4, 5 in minor. So in this case, it would be in the key of F. It would be D minor, G minor, A minor. And so to extend your ear training, you would just add those 3 minor chords into the key and into your listening exercises, and having those as well, that increases the challenge because the minor chords are basically counterparts to the major chords, and they're going to sound very similar. And if you're just really getting into ear training, I might have gone past where you need to be today, and you'll have to refer back to this at a later point. And you might just want to stick with the listening to where chord changes are first. Just drill yourself on that. I think I'm really liking the pull up an ukulele cover song that you like, and close the window or minimize the window so you're not looking at the video, and listen for the chord changes, and do that a couple of times. Listen to it a couple of times, and then bring the window up and watch the video and see when the chord changes happen, and check yourself on that. And that's where I think that it's useful to have like just the lyrics, and mark on the lyrics where you think the changes are happening and where they're actually happening, because that is one of the biggest hurdles, and one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they over change the chords. It's like, oh, we had a chord change here and here and here. They'll guess that the beginning of that last bar is another chord change, even if it stays on that chord. And so if you're stuck in the rut of like, oh, there's a chord change every bar, there must be a chord change every single bar, and there's one chord that goes for 2 bars, you're going to be thrown off by that. And it's good to break that habit, and to critically assess every time a bar comes around, is the chord the same or did it change? Because if it's the same, you don't want to be telling yourself, oh, I need to figure out what the next chord is, because that's just counterproductive. So if you have any other questions, please throw them in the chat. Happy to help you try and understand this better. Otherwise, I think that's a pretty solid amount of practical advice, consultation, lesson, whatever you want to call it, for how to proceed in hearing these things for yourself. Because I believe that it's really the most powerful way to play music, is use your ears and trust your intuition, as opposed to looking from a page. Not saying that playing from a page is bad, because there are good things to it. I super envy classical players who can like pick up a piece of music and just play what they see. That's amazing to me, and I don't have that skill. I can like chicken pick my way through a piece of music, like slowly read the notes, and I can do that. But like sight reading, real sight reading, that's on a whole nother level. And that kind of thing, you know, I don't want to negate that in any way. But what you don't want to do as an ukulele player, and in my opinion, is be stuck wholly in one world or the other. It's nice to meet in the middle and be able to, oh yeah, I know how to read off a chord sheet, but I also know how to play by ear, so that you're not attached to one thing or the other. Like I know a lot of by ear only players, they would get lost when it's time to communicate something like in an official musical way. Like you start talking about eighth notes or note rhythms, or go da coda to the B section, or whatever the official musical language would be. A by ear only player would be lost. So it's good to have a mixture of both. Dan says, what about chords that last only half a bar? Those confuse me. That's a really good point too. Usually in Western music, you're changing chords on the one, like we were doing for all my examples, on the one. So each chord gets 1 bar each, or one bar and then 1 bar and then 1 bar. But the second most common place for a chord to change is on the 3, where you would only get a half of a bar. So if I was playing, that's a terrible chord progression, but it's just happening faster. That's all that's different, is that the chord change is happening quicker, and it's happening in half the time that you're used to normally hearing. But the principles for figuring it out are exactly the same. There's nothing that's really going to change as far as identifying that there is a chord change there, and identifying what the chord might be. it's still the rubber band. That's all it is. So, yeah, whether you're changing once per bar or twice per bar or mixing it up and going between, if you're playing a chord for 10 bars or 16 bars, that happens too. And you just have to be prepared to identify that on the fly and be ready to rock and roll. All right. So, thank you everybody for tuning in. Please check out the website. Go follow that link, and yeah, practice. This is one of those things you're not going to get. You're not going to wake up one day and just be able to play a song by ear. You got to just do it a lot. Play along with the radio. That's something I like to do. Is you just put on iTunes and you just sit and figure out songs, one song at a go. Bang, 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 bang. Or if you're just starting out, maybe you play through the song 5 times, and every time you get a little bit more of it. Once you get to the point where you're comfortable with that, just play your way through songs and practice training your ears. Especially in COVID times, we're kind of at a disadvantage in that we're not playing with other people. We're not stretching those muscles. If all you do is just play by yourself and strum songs by yourself, you're not being forced to listen critically as much as maybe you were before. So it's important to keep those muscles strong, play along with the radio, play along with other musicians that have already recorded those chord changes. Okay. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Same time, same place, hopefully in a Hawaii that's a little warmer, and I don't have to be as bundled up than the night before. Okay, take care, everybody. Aloha.